Hey sheepdogs, welcome to the channel. My name is Kelly Jameson. I have been surrounded by mediocrity for a very, very long time. And now I'm able to break away from mediocrity, and I started this channel to talk about mediocrity and how it's infecting the criminal justice system. Within this channel, we're going to talk about forensic science, criminology, victimology, and more importantly, interviews and interrogations. It's going to be from my perspective, based upon scholarly literature that's been peer-reviewed, and we're going to talk about what is peer-reviewed and why we don't replicate. This channel is going to be fun, but it's also going to be aggressive. Because one thing I do not like the fakers. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't claim to know everything, but I know a lot. And I want to share what my perceptions and my perspectives are to the criminal justice system. Ladies and gentlemen, this channel is dedicated to those who have lost their voice. And it's time to get their voice back. So with that, let's go. That was a pretty intense introduction, right? So before we get to anything, ladies and gentlemen, we have to ask ourselves, what is forensic science? That's our first topic. Because before we can get into the victimology and criminology and the real case studies, we have to figure out and define what forensic science is. Is it this?
So this killer used a sword? No, probably a very sharp knife. Look at the blood spatter, look at the patterns. It tells a story. You see this big pond of blood right there? That's from the initial stab. The male victim was standing right here, and the killer plunged his knife into the shoulder, severing the carotid artery, and notice the long, thick, heavy drips? Yeah, nice. Now over here you have nice, clean sprays of blood, and that can only happen when you're holding something light and moving quick. Nice, sharp slices through the body, no splashes, no drips. Clean and easy. This guy knew how to use a blade. So we're looking for a sushi chef. Yeah, sushi chef is possible. Wouldn't be my first choice, but hey, you never know. Now what? Now I eat.
So that was a scene from Dexter. Cool, right? So that's not totally what forensic science is all about. That's just one little tiny aspect of forensic science. Unfortunately, these types of shows and this type of methodology show what people on the jury and the panel expect. It's called the CSI effect. What they see on TV is what they expect to be reality. We'll talk about blood spatter in another episode. I won't get too far into it, even though I start to irk when I start watching these shows. However, let's move on. So what is a forensic science? A forensic science is the application of scientific principles and techniques to matters of criminal justice, especially as relating to the collection, examination, and analysis of physical evidence. Now, you can have a crime scene investigator who is in charge of forensic science, and then you have the people at the lab who are also in charge of forensic science. And we'll go into a little bit about both. So first and foremost, forensic science, according to the Department of Justice, is a critical element of the criminal justice system. Forensic scientists examine and analyze evidence from crime scenes and elsewhere to develop objective findings that can assist in the investigation and prosecution of perpetrators of crime or absolve of innocent persons from suspicion. Whereas a crime scene investigator documents the crime scene. They take photographs and physical measurements of the scene, identify and collect forensic evidence, and maintain the proper chain of custody of that evidence. Crime scene investigators collect evidence such as fingerprints, footprints, tire tracks, blood, or other bodily fluids, hairs, fibers, and fire debris. The key point I want to draw out in this definition is to identify and collect forensic evidence. So identifying and collecting. These are my two pet peeves in the criminal justice system. Because what I believe is that we are failing on the identification of forensic evidence. I have taught at the police academy for 39 very long months. And a vast majority of my students, they all understand the concept of identifying and collecting, but it's teaching, especially through delayed reporting, on the importance of forensic evidence, especially in sexual assaults. Sexual assaults is the most heinous crimes, in my opinion, that I have worked in my career. Because it takes the perpetrator and the victim to be in close proximity with each other. Imagine if somebody's laying upon you and the only thing that you can think about is the leaf or something on a plant next to the bed or a wall or the ceiling or anything they can look at while the act is being perpetrated on their body. I can't imagine it. I haven't been through it, but I have listened to thousands of men and women who have been through these types of trauma, and it weighs heavily on me about what I could do to maybe get some better justice for them. And that's why it's been pushing me over and over to be the best detective, especially the best crime scene investigator I can be. And I brought that to the academy when I went there for 39 very long months to teach those who are going to replace me in the future. Now, when I say identify, I'm talking about a lot of delayed reporting investigations. A lot of our men and women who come forward have been sexually assaulted or some time of crime has been committed against them, but I will stick with sexual assaults. It's been many, many months or weeks or days since they were sexually assaulted. The first thing we have to do is we have to figure out where it happened at. Now, granted, I will give it to you that most of the offenders, when we catch them, are going to say, I was there, and that's very smart of them. But for those who say, I was never there, we should pay particular attention to the forensic evidence that we can collect from the scene. If they say, I was never there, then we can go to that crime scene knowing that we can probably put them in that place. So now we're going to talk about, before I go further on a tangent, about the low carge exchange theory. What is that and how does it play into forensic science? So as I put this up here, you can clearly see that low carge exchange theory says that So as I put this up here, as you can see, the low carge principle, or the low carge exchange theory, posits that every contact by a criminal leaves behind a trace. So just think about it. I walk into a room and I am swishing around, or I'm walking around, or I'm talking to somebody and I'm putting my hands here and there. I'm putting my hands inside my pocket, outside my pocket. I'm crossing my hands. I mean, think about every movement that you do when you walk into a room, or when you walk into your bedroom, or when you're at work. You're constantly touching or talking, and as you talk, you're spitting. We shed hundreds of thousands of epithelial cells per day, the skin cells, as well as we are losing our hair, up to 150 per day on average. And so just think about your hair and your skin follicles are falling down, and so you're going to leave a trace behind you. Now, it's easy to think about, right? However, now when you are talking about a sexual assault case, a lot of people believe that, based upon a research that they read, that there's not going to be any trace evidence or latent fingerprints left behind because of one individual research. The problem that we now have, ladies and gentlemen, is that we do not have replication.
Even the best designed studies can get flukish results. And the best process that science has to guard against that is the replication study, where other scientists redo your study and see if they get similar results. Unfortunately, that happens way less than it should.
Replication studies are so rarely funded and they're so underappreciated. They never get published. No one wants to do them. There's no reward system there in place that enables it to happen. So you just have all of these exploratory studies out there that are taken as fact, that this is a scientific fact that's never actually been confirmed.
And this is a vitally important fact, is that replication studies are not merited. Meaning that when I was doing my dissertation, I wanted to do something that was closely related to another research study because I wanted to challenge her hypothesis because I didn't believe that she was completely accurate with her results. However, I was immediately slapped upside the head and I had to do something completely different because it was more or less already done. What I believe this has an impact in forensic science is that if somebody has a methodology to collect latent fingerprints or DNA or blood spatter analysis, we should be replicating to make sure that's the best way, rather than doing it one time, it gets peer-reviewed by somebody who may or may not be mediocre, then that's it. That becomes fact and reality. And I think that's a very, very dangerous thing to have in forensic science. I want to disprove and prove it over and over. And let's say we have 100 researchers, that might be too much, but you know what I'm saying, that says this is the best way to collect fingerprints a year or 2 years after the fact. This is where we would look. This is how we would develop it. This is how we would detect it. I want those replication studies to be done over and over because, again, like I just said, the men and women who are relying upon us to be their voice are counting us to be the best. But we as a forensic science community, as well as a law enforcement community, have to be better and better because the offenders are getting better and better. So what John Oliver's show is talking about is that replication is not merited, and I think that has to change. That culture where we just do it one time has to change, and you have to have the voice to also change it. Replication then fits into helping with the Dobert Standard. The Dobert Standard, if you're not familiar, I'll bring it up here, is that under the Dobert Standard, the factors that may be considered in determining whether the methodology is valid are whether the theory or technique in question can be and has been tested, whether it has been subjected to peer review and publication, its known or potential error rate, the existence of maintenance of standards controlling its operations, and whether it has attracted widespread acceptance with the relevant scientific community. What this feeds into is replication studies then meet the Dobert Standard. So if there's ever a criminologist, a victimologist, or a forensic scientist on the stand, the more we replicate our methodologies, the more it holds up to the Dobert Standard. It gets more scientifically upheld. This is a big deal because there's a lot of people that think that need to be certified through the IAI, and I won't go too far into that. I just don't believe that that is best for our scientific community. Certifications mean nothing to me. As long as I am challenging the hypothesis, writing up my research, getting it published, getting it peer-reviewed by those who are just as tenacious as I am, that's what matters. Certification just means that I'm paying somebody some money for a piece of paper. I'm not going to explain to the judge that I have a piece of paper. Now, I know there's a lot of lawyers out there who like certification because it's just easier to explain or rather not defend when they have a Dobert hearing at a trial. But believe me, ladies and gentlemen, if you are following the scientific community and the scientific way of doing it, you're never going to be challenged because, after all, just pick up a textbook and do it the textbook way. Because, after all, that is scientific accepted. Okay, so you're like, okay, I get it. I get what you're saying. We got to be tenacious. We got to be passionate. So where should we start? And in my humble opinion, it has to start with education. In 2015, I went to George Mason University, and if I could, I would take it all back. Yes, it was free, but the way that university designed their forensic science program was extremely pathetic, and I hated every minute of it. I made some pretty good friends there, to this day, but there's a couple things wrong. One, the professors were not really professors. They only had master's degrees, and a lot of them only had minimal experience at a small sheriff's department, and they didn't bring any value to what the courses they were teaching. They taught straight out of the textbook, and it was just horrific. And then two, the courses that they taught, as you can see here, are really, really basic. And it was undergraduate or at the associate's level. And an introduction to forensic science should be something you should take at your bachelor's level, not at a master's level. None of these, especially the research project, none of that opened up your world to forensic science. It was such on a basic level, like you've never touched forensic science before, and now all of a sudden you're getting a master's degree in it, which is completely inappropriate. So in saying that, I would recommend, universities kind of like New Haven. I got a chance to reach out and talk to a professor, and a lot of the professors have their PhDs. And don't get me wrong, PhD doesn't mean end all be all. It just means they have advanced education. That's all I'm asking for. So whether you have a master's or going for your PhD, New Haven, universities like this will better prepare you to get your doctorate degree. So as you can see here, they have a lot of their core classes are really, really advanced, which is scary, but it really, really pushes you to know your stuff. If you really want to be a really good detective or a forensic scientist or a lab nerd, you really got to hone your skills. I want thousands and thousands of hours dedicated to your skill, and this university will help you do that. Just look at the core classes. You have to take DNA. I took DNA in GMU, and it was the hardest class I've ever taken in my life. But because of my good friend Danny, she really got me through this class, and I'm so glad I got to take it because I never knew so much about DNA than I do now. And I'm so thankful that I took it. And then lastly, what I want to draw upon is that this college makes you do a thesis. And I think that is really, really special because a thesis builds into a dissertation. Ladies and gentlemen, if I had to do it again, I would really want GMU to push you into a thesis. Right now, they make you do some kind of a stupid project, or they make you test it out. And a project is pathetic. A thesis is where it's at because A prepares you to do a dissertation if you do a doctorate. And just look at it. It requires the students to write a research-based publication quality thesis. By the time you're done, you can get it published. The thesis must show an ability to organize material in a clear and original manner and to present well-reasoned conclusions. This is vitally important for you to be the best of the best, and this is one step closer to be doing it. Because if you guys run into these cases will pop up throughout your guys' career, and then you're going to ask yourself, am I the best to investigate this? And the answer is sometimes, no, I'm not. As you can probably tell in the media that the Army Criminal Investigation Division got punched in the face because we didn't do a very good job when we investigated these cases. And then are you ready for these types of cases? This case was about 4 years of my life that I lived. And was I prepared for it? Absolutely not. Am I prepared for it now? Yes, I am. But I wish I had all the training and all the knowledge that I had now in 2009 when this first occurred. So to wrap this up, we have talked extensively about what forensic science is and what it takes to be the best of the best. However, we are far from being done. In next episodes, we're going to talk extensively and aggressively about the disciplines that we mentioned. Latent fingerprint development, blood spatter analysis, trajectory analysis, all of the above. We're going to go extensively into it, and we're going to bounce ideas off each other, and more importantly, we're going to replicate and replicate and replicate. And I'm going to challenge you to give us some of your results so I can put it on this channel. That'd be fun. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, is that when it comes to it, we have to be the voice of the victim. That has been my saying for a very long time now, and I truly believe it. If we are not the best of the best, the men and women out there suffer. So this channel is dedicated to them, and I just encourage you to keep following and keep subscribing and keep liking because it's only going to get better. This is the first one, so it may be a little bit choppy, but thank you very much for hanging out. And let's go. Let's be the best of the best.